Hey everybody, welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am your host, Derek, and I've got my co-host, Ryan, with me.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to episode 29 of the podcast where we talk about Nicolas Cage movies, every single one of them. We spin our wheel o' cage to determine which movie we're going to talk about next. And this time we got 1999's crime thriller drama 8mm. And so before we dive into that movie, we do want to include a trigger warning for a lot of heavy, serious stuff, including sexual assaults, rape, pedophilia, other violent things that are not good. So yeah, it's a heavy movie. You can learn a little bit more. I believe the website is called doesthedogdie.com, I believe is the name of the site, but it will go into some level of detail about things that may be unsettling in movies, and you can decide if you want to watch and or hear about this movie. So this has been your warning for that. Ryan, anything you want to add there?
No, I mean, it's a very, very dark subject matter movie. So yeah, heed the trigger warning if any of those things sound like something that will cause you mental strife.
Yes. Yeah, the synopsis on IMDb is, quote, a private investigator is hired to discover if a snuff film is authentic or not. The movie is written by Andrew Kevin Walker, who brought us the movie Seven, for example. It was directed by Joel Schumacher, who gave us Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, but also like the number 23. So Schumacher was a little kind of all over the place in his day. Movie, of course, stars Nicolas Cage. We got Joaquin Phoenix, James Gandolfini, Peter Stormare, and Catherine Keener.
Yeah, it's a stacked cast for sure.
It is. It is. But the way we handle this is Ryan takes meticulous notes as he watches the movie, and then we go through those notes and kind of go through the movie in that order. So, Ryan.
Yeah. I do want to say that 1999 was a big year for movies in general. I believe we got The Matrix that year.
We did.
The Fifth Element.
Yeah.
There's some other good ones too, but those are the big two that off the top of my head. So 8mm, very different in terms of like content than what some of those other big hit movies. I actually don't know how. I know that a lot of people know of this movie and talk about this movie. It's not one that I had seen before, but it's one I probably won't ever see again. But you know, it seems like a lot of Nicolas Cage fans do talk about this movie. It's kind of like Leaving Las Vegas in that sense, where people speak highly of it, but then, you know, they don't really, it's not like the one they go to watch, you know, when they need their Nicolas Cage fix. So
yeah, some movies you only need to see the one time.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those movies.
Yeah.
All right, let me get to my notes here. Sorry, I got so many notes these days. It's hard to, you know, get through my book. I'm almost a little more than halfway through my Love Letters to Nicolas Cage notebook, which isn't actually Love Letters to Nicolas Cage. It's just notes from all these movies. Anyway, yeah, the intro for this movie was just like a film reel, like a, you know, old school thing, which is where the 8mm comes from. You know, 8mm could describe a lot of things.
In this case, yeah, it does describe the film format.
Yeah, so right away, it's telling you this is not talking about some firearm designation or something like that. It's talking about the 8mm film format. So that was an easy way to do that. Yeah, and then my second note we've already kind of touched on, but Joel Schumacher. I didn't realize that going in. I was like, holy crap, this guy is the guy that made Mr. Freeze in the Batman movies with Arnold, and also this movie. Very opposite ends of the spectrum.
Ryan, I'm going to need you to chill a little bit.
Yeah. But this does lend credence to the rumors of the like much darker and more serious Schumacher cut of that Batman movie. So, you know, I think that's interesting. And he has done more serious
stuff. Yeah.
He has. I guess I'm not as familiar with this heavier stuff. But yeah, that was surprising to me.
It's a little weird, right? Because like we grew up on his Batman movies, and so we have a very specific vision for him. But you know, he did Phantom of the Opera. He did Phone Booth. I had mentioned the number 23. That was the heavy Jim Carrey horror flick. Or I guess.
And its sequel, 24.
Cute.
But you did need to watch the first 22 to get what was happening in 23. So that's good.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So then we just start right away with casual smoking, which is a pretty big theme through this movie. Lots of smoking, lots and
Yeah.
lots of smoking. And in 99, I feel like that's a stretch because stuff was starting to slow down in regards to smoking in movies, I think, at this point. It was still happening, but it wasn't like it was in like 1991, for example.
Yeah, I also thought it was building towards something because kind of
Yeah, that too. It
like,
seems like it's setting up a theme, but
right.
you never really get any kind of payoff for that.
Well, because like so Nic Cage is his private investigator, right? And so he's away from home a lot. He's got a wife, Catherine Keener, and they have a young like infant at home. And he lies about the smoking, and seemingly that's the only thing he lies to her about. So I thought that was going to be a catalyst for something later in the movie.
You basically just hit my next like 3 notes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My next note was private investigator, where that's established that's what, although you're not really sure at the beginning, like, is he a cop? What is he? But it's pretty early. It lets you know he's a private investigator. And then, casually lying about smoking. I thought that was going to be a payoff too, because, something that we've talked about before. It's a theme in a lot of these Nic Cage movies that he plays an asshole.
Yeah.
And so I thought in this case it was going to be the asshole lying to his wife. And yes, he is kind of an asshole to his wife in this movie in a lot of ways. But that is not really, she knows that it's happening.
Right. Yeah. Like she doesn't have a lot to do. Like Catherine Keener is kind of wasted in this role because she's a really good actor, but she doesn't have much to do here.
Yeah, she's mostly just a damsel in this movie, which is really disappointing.
It is, but she is aware. Like she's not an idiot. She knows that our buddy Nick, Tom Wells is his name, is lying to her.
Right. I also had on there that I thought it was great that there was a wife of similar age in this movie.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Good catch.
Then right away we get a Nic Cage sex scene, which is great. We don't get to see any.
Which is great.
We don't get to see any Cage booty, but which is another square on our bingo card, I think. But Nick's sex scene is on our bingo card.
Yes, Nick's sex scene is. I don't know if we have nudity. I don't see nudity on the card.
I thought there was one for Nic Cage shows his butt or something.
That one didn't make the cut this week.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just we have some that just rotate in and out. So, so this is kind of a weird one, but maybe you noticed it, maybe you didn't. We get a scene after the sex scene of him like raking leaves in his front yard.
Yeah.
Which we get a couple scenes of that in the movie, but in this one in particular, there's smoke. Like you can clearly see this one point in the yard where there's smoke coming out, and it doesn't really make any sense. It looks like they just set up a smoke machine and covered it with like some sod.
Huh.
Just because they needed a weird. Yeah, me and my girlfriend watching this movie, they both noticed immediately that there's just random smoke. And this isn't the only scene where this happens. Also, if you think back to Batman Forever, there's also a lot of unnecessary smoke. So I feel like this is just something that Joel Schumacher really likes to do in his movies. He just likes smoky scenes.
Well, maybe smoke machines are cheap.
Maybe, and he just likes that atmosphere, but whatever, yeah. Yeah. So the next note is just kind of a plot point. Deceased husband leaves an 8mm movie reel. So he completes like one investigation earlier in the movie. That's how we determine he's a private investigator. And it's kind of set up that he's a really good private investigator, and he like keeps his word to people and keeps his silence on things. It doesn't go around spilling the beans. He's trustworthy.
Even though this ends up being completely contradicted towards the end of the film.
It does. Spoiler alert. But that's like the thing that that's why people hire him, right, for his discretion. And so, yes, this older lady, she's apparently a famous person of some kind because she and her husband were very rich. Her husband passed away recently, and they had to break into his safe because he didn't leave the combination. And when they broke into the safe, they found an 8mm film reel. And when they played it, it's a snuff film. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's a film where generally a woman is raped or sexually assaulted in some way and then murdered. And that seems to be what this video is. Although, he doesn't know if it's real or fake. And so she basically this older lady is hiring him to determine whether this video is fake or real. That's the main reason, but also to figure out why her husband has it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and it kind of shows the snuff film, and it Nic Cage cringing and getting upset by the movie and everything else, just as you would expect a normal human to have a reaction to something like that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird situation, right? We're introduced to the lawyer. He's there with the older woman, and they have just like this room off to the side where Nick can watch the film. And
yeah, they set up an 8mm video, player.
But like, this is 1999. Like 8mm was already well gone at that point. So that's a little
right. And they touch on that later in the movie. He says that like you couldn't get this particular film reel after 92.
Yeah.
But then like the woman is missing starting in 93. So who knows?
Well, I guess you could buy some and not use it. Like,
But they make it a point to say, so this movie was made before 1992. So that's where that whole thing is. But anyway,
the movie does that a few times where it tells us what it considers to be a fact, and then later it contradicts itself.
Yeah, that's true. So I don't even remember what's happening at this point, but we get to see Nic Cage like walking through a parking garage, and there's more random smoke in the background just happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm pretty sure it's just a Joel Schumacher thing. But then we get a scene with his family, kind of showing us that he's a loving father, despite, what we may see later in the movie. He does love his daughter. He is somebody that seems to care about his family. He may not do the best job at being a dad or a husband, but he does genuinely love his family.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start seeing like his detective work about this film. He goes through and he tries to ID the girl, first of all. So he goes to like a police station. He goes to a police station. Does this happen before? Yeah, because he has to have the girl's name to go before he goes to the other place. So yeah, he goes to a police station. He just starts looking for pictures. He prints off a picture of a...
Well, I think it's important to note that he's allowed to do this because he's lying about who he is.
To everybody in the movie. To
everybody.
Yeah.
And somehow gets away with it basically every time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's shown to, or like it's established. I didn't really have a problem with that because it's established pretty early on that he's a good private investigator. And part of that, I imagine, is lying to get information. If your only thing you care about, if you don't have any care about morals or anything like that, and really all you care about is finishing the case, getting the answers, then I can understand that. And, that's not something that's really hidden in any, you see a lot of detective films where people are doing that, pretending to be somebody else. He does it a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
But, he lies to this police captain or whatever, and they let him go into this missing persons room where it's just thousands and thousands and thousands of files on missing children, missing adults, etc. And so he spent days going through this, and eventually finds a picture that he believes to be the match. And so he goes and contacts that person's mom. And my next note is actually touching on what you just said, is that he manipulates his victim's mom by saying he's from the FBI. He's an auditor from the FBI, and they're checking to see if this case is still something they want to keep open, essentially. And so he manipulates her into letting him go through her room and, talk to the mom about the stories about her, things that may have happened. And in going through her stuff, he finds a diary, seemingly that hasn't ever been found by anybody.
Yeah,
before. It's in a toilet bowl. Not like the bowl, the tank. Yeah,
in a Ziploc bag. Which, I mean, she's been gone 5-6 years, and I guess that toilet's been fine the entire time. So good.
Toilets are pretty reliable in general. I didn't find that hard to believe.
Okay, all right, fair enough. But yeah,
it also looked like that toilet was in a room that hasn't really been used. It's attached to his bedroom. So it's
Yeah.
not like they go through the, this mom probably doesn't go through her potentially deceased daughter's room to go to that bathroom super often.
Fair
It's
enough.
like there's rubble and stuff in the bathroom. It's not clearly been taken care of. So
Well, that's yeah. The mother is not particularly well off. It's not a good neighborhood. That kind of
right.
thing.
Also, did you get weird vibes about that whole thing? Like she kept trying to get him to drink or eat with her. Like, I don't know if it was a romantic thing or what they were
No,
trying to set up there.
I think she was lonely, right? Like her husband or whatever left her 2 years after the daughter goes missing. Her daughter's been missing for 5, 6-ish years. She's not, in a good financial place or anything like that. I think she was just very lonely.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just they kept driving that point home quite a bit. They're very heavy-handed about that.
Yeah.
Because he runs into her multiple times throughout the movie, and every time she's asking him to like please stay for a drink or stay to eat or something. So, um, so in the diary, he reads about a boy that she wanted to run to California with, and they were going to become actors, and that old yarn.
Right.
So he hunts down the boy essentially, who's now a man and is in jail.
Played by Norman Reedus.
Yeah, that was my next note. Yeah, very, very young
young.
Norman Reedus. I almost didn't recognize him.
I think this is the youngest I've ever seen him.
This probably is one of his earliest roles. I can only imagine. But yeah, he's just kind of a jackass, like dude talking about how her tits weren't that great and like, just kind of just an asshole. Typical. There's no redeeming quality. Just an asshole to be an asshole.
Yeah.
So yeah, then we go to Los Angeles or Hollywood, that California area.
Right.
And it switches like this really weird Bollywood music for some reason. Did you think that was weird at all, or did it work for you?
No, it felt like it fit.
Okay.
The Hollywood montage that I'm used to seeing.
Sure. It was like a Hollywood montage, but it was like Bollywood music. It just seemed very, I don't know. It stood out to me. And there's actually a couple of times that happens. But, and the music was fine. It just, for me, didn't seem to suit the scene. But it obviously worked for you. So, that's good. So then we get like montages of him going to strip clubs and
adult bookstores,
things like that. And so we got on our bingo card topless women at this point.
Sure. Yeah.
Which you can't have a Nic Cage film without that apparently, unless it's a G-rated animated film.
It seems to be more often than not.
Yeah. Then he goes into this one particular bookstore where we get our first look at young Joaquin. Very young. Max California.
Also probably the youngest I've ever seen him.
Little on the nose with the name there. Like, I'm pretty sure that was just a fake name, but which is fine.
It's a fake name.
But he's weird. Like, he's an eccentric, like artsy kind of, doesn't want to really work at a porn store. He's kind of like Aubrey Plaza in Parks and Rec, where he's just dry, kind of sarcastic. Obviously a little more crude than that character is, but
sure.
Yeah. But that kind of vibe,
And what was he reading? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
It was some like Hawthorne or something like that.
Yeah, it was something like hoity-toity type,
that he had like inside a book that like looked like it was
like he's working at a porn store, but he's really like this really smart guy reading, really cutting edge, I don't know, cutting edge, but really like important books.
Well, I'm glad they didn't like steer into it and be like, oh yeah, I'm actually like studying in college to be a whatever. Like they didn't do that. So that's
good. True. So yeah, he meets him and nothing really happens except, that this character is going to come back because they wouldn't get Joaquin Phoenix to play this character. Although in young Joaquin Phoenix, that's true. He wasn't the name he is today. So, but I mean, I had a feeling because he's fairly high billing in this movie that he was going to probably be more than that one scene.
Yeah.
So then he's watching the movie. He's watching the snuff film like a ton of times during
his motel or whatever.
In his motel room. Yeah. And he like will project it on the wall and take like a digital picture of the scene. And so he does that. And he notices that this in this one scene, there's a third person, or there's a third like man in the room. What is presumed to be a man. There's the cameraman, There's the guy that murders and sexually assaults the woman, and then there's this third person. And so he takes it to this place to get the 1999 best photo enhancement.
Enhance.
Yeah, it was basically like that, except they're like, we have a $137,000 machine for this photo enhancement. Now it's digitally rasterized, and you can see it. And it's like they're just spitting out buzzwords. But yeah, you can now clearly see that it's the back of somebody's head.
Yeah, I don't know what the point of all that was, other than maybe to show us what Tom's able to do as a private investigator.
I guess. I don't know.
But since it goes nowhere.
Yeah, it doesn't really go anywhere. And so now his next step is to try and find people that make snuff films. And, you know, in this world of this movie, you know, people act like snuff films aren't real. They're just like a
myth.
A myth, you know, a thing people talk about. And they almost talk about it like as if it's something to be looked up to, like, you know, it's like finding lost treasure, because you're like almost like it's something good, which, because this movie, a lot of it takes place in really bad places, you know, I guess that works for that, but it's really weird the way they talk about it. But he decides that he needs to try and find someone that makes snuff films. And because these are such a rarity, there can't be that many people doing it. So he figures if he like finds somebody, then maybe he'll be able to find out more. Mm-hmm. And so he goes back to Joaquin Phoenix, who he just assumes is going to know everything about the underground of porn because he works in a porn shop. And obviously if you work in a, if you work in a porn shop, then you must know everything about porn and like do all porn type things in your free time and everything else, you know. But it turns out he got lucky, and Joaquin Phoenix does know everything about porn and the porn underground, so to speak. So they get several scenes of him and Nic Cage's character going to these like weird flea markets of
basement sales, I think is what they call them.
Basement sale. Yeah, like one looks like somebody's greenhouse or something. And he asks for snuff films, and then he gets like a gun pulled on him.
It's kind of wild because, you know, so Max California talks about how like he doesn't consume or endorse a lot of this stuff, but he knows everything and everyone. He knows everywhere to go, everything to ask. And I don't know, those two things seem in conflict with each other. I felt like
it's a little weird. I almost felt like maybe, you know, there might have been like a deleted scene that explains that maybe he like after hours goes and gets specialized porn for these people that come in his shop if they request it or something.
Maybe, but he claims he just points people in the right direction.
Yeah, but then he actually goes there when he points people in the right direction and knows everybody by name. So yeah, they go to several of these, and it's really kind of horrible because you see like a kids section, and you know, you go to supermarkets and you see kids sections, but this is a section for child pornography. And you know, there's people that are like, I've got the worst of the worst shit, you know, sexual assault, rape, you know, whatever you want, I've got it. And you know, he'll ask his people about, you know, murder or like killing, or not murder, but like, you know, snuff. And they're like, get the fuck out of here, I don't know anything about that.
Well, because they keep referencing, Max keeps talking about how things are like not quite illegal. He keeps phrasing it in that kind of way. And like, look, I get that like the line that they're trying to get across is like, well, these people weren't killed, but I still think like a lot of that's illegal.
Yeah, probably.
Right? Like, I don't know, just the way they were forcing the language seemed really odd. It was just an odd way of distinction. Like, well, unless you kill somebody like that, yeah, that's illegal. The rest of it's not. Like, I don't know. That just really was odd to me.
It was weird. So then they do manage to find somebody that claims they have some snuff films, and they sell it to them
for
a crazy amount of money. Yeah,
it was a lot. It was like $2,000 or something like that.
Yeah, and so they go to this. I don't know if it's Max's room. I think it's Max's room, wherever he lives, because he has like a poster for his band and shit up in his room. And they watch these. And this is the point where I was like, okay, Max is going to die. because anytime you get weird character development, like what we got in the scene for a side character like Max in a movie like this, it chances are it means they're not going to be long for this world. So we find out in the scene that he was in a band and that he loves to play. He pulls out his guitar while they're watching the snuff film and just like hangs it around his neck. He doesn't actually play it or anything. We just get a lot of personal information about Max that, is really not necessary to the movie, just to make you connect with the character a little bit more. And so they eventually, I don't remember how they get to this point, but he finds out that she may have gone to like a convent.
Well, first we find out that those snuff films are not real.
Yeah. He notices that it's the same girl in the second one that was in the first one. So it couldn't be real, obviously, because you can't kill someone twice.
Yeah, I don't know how he knew what order they were filmed in or whatever, but
I mean, it doesn't really matter. She died in both of them. So,
okay. Gotcha.
So yeah, he starts going to like these different convents and churches and things, trying to find if she maybe stayed at one of these places.
Yeah, like women's shelters. Yeah.
Right, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so it turns out that there was a suitcase. One of the nuns recognized this woman that was here for less than a month, 6 years ago or whatever, and says, "Oh, we kept her suitcase all this time." So, he takes her suitcase and starts going through it, and written on or something in the suitcase is "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," the whole like poem or whole song or whatever. And then on the back there's some phone numbers. So he starts calling those, and I think either this time or like a little earlier than this, it's like kind of revealed that there's a weird guy like following him.
Yeah, we get a little bit of that. We never learn who's following him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a little weird, but yeah, it shows like the outline of a guy that's like behind him a lot. So he calls this number, and it turns out that it's like a casting call for pornography, essentially.
Right, and that's James Gandolfini's character.
Yeah, and so he's got like 20 women in various stages of undress outside of his office. And Nic Cage kind of bursts in and starts asking if he knows anything about this girl. And he looks at the girl and no, I don't. He acts, but like you can tell he thinks about it for a second. They're setting it up to like, oh, he knows something, but he's going to say he doesn't know anything.
Right.
And he refers to the women as like, he uses derogatory terms towards the women to make them seem like they're nothing. They're just objects to him. And he gets so much pussy and all this other stuff. Just really crude about the way he's describing women and what they are. So yeah, it's established. Basically, everybody in this movie is an asshole. So that night, Nic Cage has some casual B&E, which is my next note. Breaking and entering. He breaks into the guy's office and bugs his phone, and then stalks him for a few days.
Yeah, somehow like rents a floor across the street and is like on a stakeout.
Yeah. And I think at this point, after a couple days, he just decides to call the guy and go, "I know what you did to the girl."
Yeah, because he's not getting what he
happens.
wants. He's trying to push the issue because he's running out of money. And
So he calls him and is like, "I know what you did with the girl. You're fucked now," or something like that, and then hangs up. And he's watching the guy through the window, and he can see the guy immediately like freak out and call somebody. And whoever he's talking to is like, "Don't ever call me about this. Nothing's gonna happen," and then hangs up or something along those lines. And then
we're supposed to assume that that's Dino Velvet, Peter Stormare's character.
And so he uses some piece of tech to play back the tones for the numbers on the phone to reverse trace what number was called. And it turns out it's in New York. And so he heads to New York.
He flies all over the place in this movie, man, because he starts in Pennsylvania. He's in Harrisburg. He's in Hershey. He goes down to North Carolina at one point.
Yes, and he brings Joaquin Phoenix's character with him, and Joaquin Phoenix knows about this. Max California knows about this guy named Dino Velvet, and so he goes and buys some of these movies because apparently these movies are really hard to get. It's like, it's a very limited release, and so he gets some of these movies somehow. He pays a lot of money for them, watches them, and in this porn movie, there's like random close-ups of cats and dogs. Did you notice that?
Yeah,
It was
that was
super weird editing.
Yeah.
But Dino is a genius. He's the guy if you're looking for, really crazy BDSM or potentially snuff films.
I'm wondering if they were trying to keep the R rating, and if they had shown what they originally had planned, it would have pushed beyond the R.
Certainly possible. But, one thing that I'm realizing around this point in the movie is that I didn't know how much I needed Peter Stormare and Nic Cage in the same movie. Because, to be honest, they do similar things. I don't think I've ever seen a role for Peter Stormare where I'm like, this guy's phoning it in. I've never seen that from. He always gives 100%. Just like that's one thing we love about Nic Cage too, is that he always gives his all to even the smallest roles.
Yeah.
And Peter Stormare, I think, is very similar in that respect, and they both like to use their whole body and face in interesting ways. And so, yeah, just seeing the two of them in the same movie was really great, and I hope that happens again. I don't know if it will or not, but I hope we get to see him in some other movies with Nic Cage. That'd be great. But yeah, he's a porn director in this movie, and so Max California and Tom Wells, Nicolas Cage's character, go to Dino Velvet to commission a porn film. And weirdly, their request is that they want a black woman and a white woman. And then they want this guy called the Machine, who is the one that was in the snuff film and killed the girl, and who is in almost all of Dino Velvet's productions, or potentially all of them.
Yeah, he wears a mask. Nobody ever sees his face. He shows up in the mask. He leaves.
Yeah, he's like it's like a gimp mask, like a BDSM type, leather mask. And then Peter Stormare starts hitting on Nicolas Cage and telling him he has a beautiful face. And honestly, I would have watched an hour and a half of just that.
See, I thought that was all about just trying to get like video evidence of Nic Cage for later.
Could have been, but I mean, I wouldn't put it past somebody like that to just. I mean, the way he's trying to play himself up as an artist,
right? Yeah,
and so appreciating the beauty of somebody, regardless of their gender, I think fits that pretty well.
Fair enough. That's fair. The cost of the film was cheaper than I anticipated.
Remember, this was 1999.
It was only $10,000.
That's true.
To have a custom curated film made, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it would cost more than that, but
probably. Yeah. So he gives him he says, show up to this. And like Nic Cage has two conditions for this film. One is that the Machine is there and is the one that does the sexual assault or what it is. And the second is that Tom Wells is able to watch it. He wants to watch it live.
Right.
And so Dino tells him to come to this place at this time with the money. And that's where they'll be filming. And big surprise, it's a setup.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, when he shows up and the director is shooting a crossbow, ominously.
Peter Stormare with a crossbow is just
at a cross that's hanging on the wall. I mean,
that was a little heavy-handed, but
yeah. But yeah, there was many indicators that this was going to be a setup, but it was.
And Machine's already there, ready to go.
Machine's already there, and so is the guy from California, the casting call guy, Eddie.
Yeah.
Who was the one that kind of tipped off Dino that this might be happening, something's going on. And so, they're gonna kill him. Essentially, they have him. Yeah, Nic Cage. They have him tied up or like handcuffed to a bed, essentially.
And they are kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah, they kick the crap out of him, and then they want the movie. They want the snuff film the copy of it. And they made the comment earlier, like a throwaway comment saying you can't copy 8mm movies. So that's how they know that this is the only version.
Yeah, I should probably have looked into that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but regardless, that is a major, that has to be the
Massive plot point, yeah.
because otherwise the whole thing is stupid. But yeah, so they want this copy of the film because it's the only copy of the film. And so that's why they haven't killed him yet. And when he like refuses, they bring in Max California, who's all fucked up, and hang him on the cross, the crucifixion. And yeah, that's a real big surprise for somebody that figured this out earlier when he started getting character development. And so, yeah, he gets his throat cut like 2 seconds later.
Is that what happened? I wasn't sure if it was that or
I wasn't sure either. It was a weird thing because like he's wearing a lot of necklaces. You can't really see what happens. And so I had to ask the person I was watching it with, like, did he just get his throat slit? Because either way, something happens to his neck and he dies. Yeah. It's unclear.
It was very quick though.
And so while Peter Stormare is threatening Nicolas Cage's character, he pulls a copy or a photo out that Nick had out of his wallet of Nicolas Cage's family, and he's talking about how he's going to kill them if he doesn't get them the photo or the video and stuff like that. And then I'm hoping this was just improvised. Peter Stormare eats the photograph. Like, he just sticks it in his mouth.
Yeah.
For seemingly no reason. He just sticks this photo in his mouth, and then like a scene later, he spits it out and unfolds it. But I really just hope that was improvised. It did not feel like that was a scripted moment. Did that feel scripted to you?
No, I mean, it was a very like Stormare.
Dino eats the photo in the script, you know, like
the photo. No, you're right. Yeah, I was too distracted, I think, in the moment that Nick's character would have that type of personally identifying stuff on him.
As a private investigator, you know, and also
not just a private investigator. Like, this is obviously probably the most serious case he's ever touched. Right? There's murder involved. There's lots of other violent crimes involved. He's dealing with all these people who are doing.
People tell him that he's stuff. Way out of his depth the whole time. Yeah,
the whole time people are saying he's going to die. He's got his gun on him because he thinks shit's going to go down. But what's he doing? He's keeping the family photos in his wallet.
Apparently,
like, that's just a bad idea, man.
So
have you ever watched? I don't like when people in movies have never watched a movie.
Well, he has in the movie. He watched the stuff.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
So at this point, we finally start to get some caginess. You know, he starts losing his mind a little bit with the threat of his family. And we get he goes out. So it turns out that the lawyer.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's revealed in this scene that the lawyer is really kind of the linchpin to all of this. And so he takes him out to Nic Cage's car to go get the film. And so apparently he just kept it in his car all the time. So, and at this point I thought it was a fake film. He had just bought like an 8mm reel somewhere. And because they didn't do anything to verify that it was the actual film. They just
that's not true. Eddie holds it up to the light and like looks at the frames.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind then. I didn't notice that.
Up until that point, though, I think that was a fair guess that he was trying to, not because, he knows that it's the big piece of evidence here. And without it, that most of this doesn't stick. But like, this is where like a lot of the logic of the movie started to fall apart for me. Like up until this point, like this is a brutal, depressing, difficult movie, but like well made and well acted. Until we get to this point, and then it just kind of unravels for me because we learn that the lawyer specifically sought out and hired Nic Cage because he was young and inexperienced, even though we've been told that he's like done work for senators and other Congress people. And that's why this rich lady was wanting to hire him and stuff. So it's like all of a sudden he's gone from the PI of the Senate to this like green schmuck who can't get the job done. Like,
right. But he's not exactly young in this movie either. That's the thing is it's not like he's not like an 18-year-old kid fresh out of college.
Right. So like, it doesn't. So, but the lawyer hired him because he's inexperienced.
Yeah. I kind of wish they had just left that part out. And I was more than fine with the fact that the lady had just heard of,
absolutely,
this character because totally he did good work.
Right.
Yeah, and just
Right.
left it
Rich
at
people
that.
talk to each other, right?
Sure.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Or even just if the lawyer had hired him thinking nobody's going to dig deep enough to figure this out. And it was just a miscalculation,
Yeah.
right? Like that can happen, right? But it just seemed all of a sudden the character we've been with for an hour and a half is apparently not that person.
Right.
That bothered me.
Yeah, it's a little weird. We start to get our first action bits in the movie where so they bring the film back up to wherever this porn set is and chain him back to the bed while Peter Stormare's character is going to burn the snuff film, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And Nic Cage is yelling about this $1 million. And they did this for $1 million because the widow had gone through the bank accounts and found out that there was $1 million that was all made out, checks made out to cash. And so he kept yelling about this $1 million. And so they kind of turn on each other in this moment. The villains. I mean, everybody's kind of a
Dino
villain in
and
this
Eddie
movie.
figure out that the lawyer basically stole their money.
Yeah. And so they turn on him and he pulls a gun on them and Dino has the crossbow. And so Dino ends up shooting him in the chest. And at the same time, the lawyer shoots at Dino and like nicks his neck, an artery in his neck. And they kill each other.
That's not how I thought that was going to go down, by the way. That did surprise me.
I mean, I didn't know how it was going to go down, but that was as good as any, I suppose.
Fine. Yeah.
And the whole time that they're doing this, Nic Cage is like trying to pull the bed that he's handcuffed to get closer because the villains left a giant table full of weapons, knives, guns, bullets.
Well, it's his gun.
Yeah, but they left it literally like just 1 foot out of arm's reach.
Yeah.
And so he manages to load one bullet into his gun and he points it at, the Eddie guy and he's like, I'll kill your ass, blah, 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 blah. And the machine is still there. And he also, Nick at some point had hidden like a spike in his hand that he was going to use if somebody came close. So the machine comes in and tries to stop him and he stabs the machine in the stomach. And I can't remember, does he kill Eddie in this scene?
No.
Okay, so he doesn't actually get the shot off at Eddie at this point. He gets shot off, but doesn't hit Eddie.
Yeah, the Eddie thing is much later.
He shoots his in a handcuffs, doesn't he?
Yeah, so he can free
to
himself.
break off the handcuffs. Yeah. So yeah, I had action for my note because we finally get some action in this movie. It wasn't just a drama. And then we get more Bollywood style music.
Is this during the drive away?
I think so. Yeah, when he's like calling us
down the road.
Yeah, he's in a Crown Vic. He has several cars in this movie. He has Ford Taurus, like a mid-90s Ford Taurus.
When he's in Carolina.
He's in his home. And then he gets a Chrysler Sebring convertible when he's in California, which is the Michael Scott mobile if you're an Office fan. It's very similar to the car Michael Scott has and is always bragging about in that show. And then, when he gets to New York, he's driving like a Crown Vic.
Yeah.
And so, he's like drifting around these corners in this rear-wheel drive Crown Vic, sliding around, while he's on the phone with his wife because he has a 1999 cell phone.
Windows and stuff. It looked like a StarTAC. Actually, for those who remember the old StarTAC flip phone, no?
Okay. Well, he had a phone and he was calling.
The phone to have in 1999.
He was calling his wife and he's like, you have to leave. You have to get the daughter and leave. Go to where we spent 4th of July in 1997 or something like that. And so they go and apparently it's a shit-ass motel.
It's a terrible
like, man, if this is where you took your wife for a romantic getaway, man, I'm sorry.
I needed more to that story. Why did they spend
right? Maybe it was better then. I mean, I don't know.
Oh man, that's pretty bad. But
so after he calls his wife, he calls the widow.
Yeah,
and tells the widow that it's real, that her husband actually had a girl murdered, and that he basically did it just because he could.
That's what because the lawyer tells him.
Yeah.
Because something we kind of glossed over a little bit is one of the keys is that Tom Wells wants to understand the motive, why behind all of this stuff that he is learning about throughout this movie, because it's all horrible stuff. And in his mind, there's got to be a reason, right? And so the first reason he gets from the lawyer about why the rich old dude did this was because he could. He was so rich that he could do it. So he did it. Which is a theme that carries on in the rest of the movie.
Yeah, so he calls the widow and tells her all this, and she wants the name of the victim, and she's clearly distraught and clearly not like in a healthy place mentally, which obviously I don't think anybody really would be in this circumstance.
No.
But yeah, so he hangs up with her. He said, I'll be by tomorrow or something like that, and we'll go over the details.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he gets that shitty ass motel, talks to his wife and, tells her that we got to just be here for a few days. We got to be here for a few days. And she's threatening divorce, saying like, this is too much, blah, blah, blah. And he keeps smoking through all of this in the whole movie. He's smoking, not when he's around her, but just like when he's just outside the door from wherever she's at.
He smokes a lot.
Yeah. So then he goes to the widow's house and she has killed herself. And she left 2 envelopes. One was money for the family of the woman that was killed. And then one was to Nic Cage's character, basically. I assume there was money in there, but
yeah, no, there was, because he talks later when he gives it to his wife about how like this is their kids like school.
Oh yeah, that's right,
and things like that.
But there's also a note in there, talking about how now this case is closed, and whatever else. So then he goes back to California.
Does he?
Yeah, to get Eddie.
Right. Sorry.
So yeah, he goes back to California and he basically kidnaps Eddie and he has Eddie take him to, well, he follows Eddie around for a while and he like interrupts a porn shoot that's happening.
By accident. He doesn't mean
by accident. Yeah. And then when, he waits outside and Eddie eventually comes out, I think this is where he gets him, and he makes Eddie drive him to where they killed the girl in the snuff film. And he does take him there. And he ties him to like this pole in the room.
It's the wall. The wall's all broken through.
Yeah, it's broken down. There's studs. It's like a stud in the wall that he gets tied to. He's using
electrical wiring to tie him up.
Right. He ties like around his neck and then ties that to his hands behind his back. But then, yeah, the villain gives the full confession, gives all the information, talks about how he didn't want to watch because he was there because he had never seen somebody get killed before, but then when it was happening, he didn't want to watch. And, he has basically a whole confession there. And he, tells Nick, just kill him if he's going to kill him. Just kill me. And he calls him the F slang word for gay people, which, so I had casual homophobia on there, which is not directly on our board. We have casual racism on our bingo board, but homophobia is something we just kind of
maybe we also
agreed.
Maybe we should just change it to like casual bigotry. Maybe
that would be fine. But yeah, it's just kind of all encompassing that whole thing. So that I didn't think we were going to get that in this movie. 99. I guess 99 wasn't really starting to phase out that word. Unfortunately, it kind of went on into the early 2000s, but yeah, so Nic Cage, his character, kills. I keep saying Nic Cage is doing these things. He's not actually doing these things. It's just playing a role where he does these things.
Tom Wells.
Tom Wells kills this guy. He like pulls all the porn out of the guy's car. Or no, does he shoot the guy first?
So it's pretty brutal.
He beats the guy with the
because he's going to shoot him, and Eddie is all like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? You're gonna shoot me with the gun you have registered in your own name," and like kind of thing. Which movies don't usually call that type of stuff out. So I did think that was kind of interesting. That Eddie's making the assumption that Tom is too much of like a goody to know how to get away with a gun murder, right? And so Wells goes outside and calls the mother of the girl and basically like is begging for permission to kill Eddie, essentially.
Yeah, so I put my next note was he's torturing this poor mom because he's talking about he calls this mom like late at night and she's like laying in bed and he's asking her to, if he loved her daughter or if she loved her daughter.
He asked this question in the first time when they meet of which would you prefer? Would you prefer to never know,
and just assume that she's happy and alive somewhere, but not know it for sure?
or would you rather know for sure but know that it was bad?
And that she was dead. Yeah.
And in the moment, she says that she needs to know. And yeah, it's an impossible question to ask a person who's in that actual situation.
But she does
right?
actually answer it, so it's not that impossible.
Well,
apparently.
what I mean is like it's a no win.
Right.
Right.
That's true.
There's no good answer. Right. There's
Yeah.
just the in the moment answer for that person.
Yeah. And she does say that she would rather know
Right.
that and have her be dead. And so he tells her that or something along those. I can't remember the exact conversation, but it was pretty brutal. Yeah. The conversation was he's, really ruining this poor mother's like life with this phone call. And then Nic Cage puts his murder outfit on, which is like a sleeveless t-shirt. I don't know what that kind of shirt is called.
I didn't notice that he changed.
Yeah, so he's wearing that earlier in the movie, but he doesn't murder anybody at that point. But then, yeah, it's like a black sleeveless tee. Yeah, well, it looks more like a tank top with like shoulders. I don't know.
It's a muscle shirt.
Is that what it is? Okay, yeah, it's a muscle shirt. It's a sleeveless, muscle shirt. And yeah, that's his murder outfit. And so I immediately turned to my partner and said, "Oh yeah, this is his murder outfit. We're gonna see a bit of him with this because it's all black, and he's got blood on his face." But yeah, he beats the shit out of this guy with his gun, which I don't know if that counts as Nick uses a melee weapon on our bingo board.
So I was gonna ask you. I counted it.
Okay, we didn't, but I mean, we definitely can. Yeah. So.
I think anytime you use an object to
kill somebody or beat somebody,
then that counts.
Okay. So yeah, then we got our Nic Cage just uses a melee weapon on our bingo board, our Cageo board. So yeah, he kills this guy. He pulls all the porn out of this guy's vehicle, dumps it all around him after he's already killed him. Just tons and tons and tons of videos and pictures, and burns it all down. Lights the guy on fire, whatever, burns this building down. So then he's trying to get the machine.
Right. Who is the guy, the masked guy?
The masked guy from the movies. That's the last guy that he needs to deal with for this to be dealt with. And so he's calling around to a bunch of hospitals in the area in California to find out pretending to be a police officer, trying to find if somebody came in with an abdominal wound, a stabbing wound, because he had stabbed the machine with a spike of some kind during that kind of porn shoot brawl. Mm-hmm. And so he finds out that there is one of these hospitals that the guy went to, and he gets the guy's information. His name is like Gregory Appleby or something like that. It's like, the most generic white bread name, ever. Mm-hmm.
I do have some problems about that stuff too, because like I'm not a HIPAA expert or anything, but I don't think a hospital in 1999 would be allowed to provide that information to just somebody over the phone.
That's probably accurate, but then the movie wouldn't have made sense. So they did it. So then he goes to this guy's address and finds out he lives with his mother. And you get to see more of his murder outfit, but then he adds Matrix sunglasses to it. And there's like a big scene of him screwing a silencer onto his gun, which he apparently got somewhere, because he kind of shows his kit that he travels with earlier in the movie, and you just see the pistol. There's no silencer or anything like that. And he doesn't even usually carry the pistol the way the wife talks about it.
Mm-hmm. But I guess he hasn't learned anything from his conversation with Eddie, about the gun being registered in his name, right, and all that. But
he somehow acquires a silencer to fit his gun. And, he's now turned into Hitman. And so, yeah, he, I put, where did he get his silencer? So then he goes into the house and starts searching for the machine. There's like weird Russian metal or something playing.
Yeah.
And he's walking. It's like a really long one take, or like one shot, like there's no cuts for a lot of this. Did you notice that? When he's in the house, it was really weird. I don't know why they went with that for that particular shot, but it was good. I always like seeing those kind of shots.
I think they shot it inside like an actual house, and so I would imagine it was just difficult to set it up for shooting.
Well, they probably wanted to make it feel very small too, and so that was effective for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's in. He can't find this guy, even though the music is on and like it keeps turning on, and eventually the guy shows up with his mask on and knocks Nic Cage's character out the window. My next note here was he's raging against the machine.
Cage is raging against the machine.
Yeah. So just wanted to let that one marinate for a second.
Fantastic.
So yeah, they're fighting, and like I thought for a second this is going to be another one where Nic Cage dies at the end, but he kills the other guy with him.
Yeah, I thought that too.
So yeah, they get into a fight. Nic Cage gets gut stabbed, and they're fighting in a graveyard, as if that's not heavy-handed. You know, everything else wasn't heavy enough. Now that they're fighting in a graveyard, and he ends up killing this guy. He makes him take his mask off, and the dude just looks like a generic, you know, guy, like a accountant or something, you know, wearing glasses. And he's like, "What did you expect? What do you think I look like?" or something like that. And in the whole movie, they're making it seem like it's going to be some big reveal when we finally find out who the machine is. But then, you know, when it got close to the time when we were going to find out, I was like, there's nobody in this movie that has shown that it could be. They haven't set up anybody.
Right. But I think that's the point, though.
Right. And I get that, but then don't act like, you know, this is going to be a big reveal to the audience. You know what I mean? Why set it up that way? You know,
well, because we are, I think that's because our, you know, telescope into this is Wells. So we are just following along with him, and Wells is expecting it to be somebody significant, some horrible, terrible person that can be linked to some bad group or something like that, right? And so we're just there to experience it how he experiences it.
I mean, I get that, but you know, we wouldn't know that he was linked to some horrible group when he took his mask off, because there's nobody that has been in this movie that has, you know, been linked to a group like that.
No,
you know what I mean? Like,
I agree. It's
the mask reveal in the moment. There's no way that could have been big.
No, but I think that's on purpose.
Okay.
Right. Because I think it's because this entire time, Wells keeps expecting there to be some big answer. So he's still expecting some big reveal.
Right. I get that in character, but as an audience watching the movie and seeing all these things happen, you know, going into this, or at least I knew, there's nobody else in this movie that it could be that would be a big answer. So I get that his character is looking for something that's a big answer. His character may have knowledge that the audience doesn't have, you know, of people in that universe that haven't been in the movie. But as an audience member, we've only been introduced to so many characters.
Sure.
So there's no way that we could be surprised as an audience member and go, oh man, that guy is a really bad dude. Now everything makes sense. Maybe him as a character could be, because like I said, he might have knowledge of things that happened in that universe that weren't pertinent to the movie before this, but we knew that it wasn't going to be. So that reveal, I don't know. I guess it just didn't really work that way for me. Maybe it did for you. I understand what you're saying, but it just, in the moment, just seemed like, okay. I mean, I expected it to just be some generic guy that I don't know who it is, because there's no one else in this movie that it could be.
Fair enough.
That it's going to set up in the last 10 minutes to be this horrible person, you know, unless they took the mask off and it was Hitler or something, you know, that was from our world.
That would have surprised me. That would have
that would have been a hell of an ending. But yeah. So he gets stabbed, but he ends up killing the guy, and I guess he drives himself to the hospital while he's bleeding out, because there's a scene of him just like falling out of his car at the hospital. And then the next scene is basically the end of the movie. He's back with his family at his house, and he's raking leaves. No smoke this time. And the mailman shows up, and he goes and looks at letters in the mail, and he got one from the mom of the woman that was murdered. And at this point in my head, and well, not just in my head, I spoke it out loud, but I was like, I wonder if they're going to clear up whether he gave the money to that family or not, or that woman or not. And it does. There's like a letter that it reads out loud, you know, talking about how the woman hated him for what he did, but that she's glad he finally got the truth. And, you know, thanks for the money. And, you know, it's just kind of a depressing ending. Like, thanks for finding out that my daughter was murdered.
Oh,
and
yeah.
sexually assaulted, you know, right before she died.
It's deeply depressing. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the mother, I guess, to some extent gets a level of closure, even though it's horrible. Tom Wells is obviously like deeply traumatized.
Yes.
by everything that he experienced. You know, one of the few like brighter spots of the movie, Joaquin Phoenix, he's long dead
Dead.
at this point. Seemingly Wells and his wife work everything out because they're all still living together at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But the old woman, Miss Christian or whatever her
Killed
name is,
herself.
she kills herself, right? I mean, I guess the bright spot is that all three bad guys or four bad guys get killed too.
Yeah.
You know,
I
so
guess.
there's that.
I mean,
But
I did actually think that this movie had some franchise potential, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't do a few more of them. Because if you think about it in the sense, yes, it's very depressing, but if you think about it in the sense of this like private investigator that is slowly delving into like this much darker and deeper world,
so there
movie through
there
movie.
is a sequel.
Oh, is there?
So
Is it called 9mm?
no, it's called 8mm 2.
Okay. Why isn't it called 8 to the second power millimeter or something like that?
No, I don't know. I don't know any of these people who are involved in this movie like at all. I don't recognize off the top of my head any of these people. But the synopsis for the sequel is an American diplomat and his fiancee venture into the sordid underworld of sex and pornography in Budapest, Hungary to find out who is blackmailing them with a porno video taken of them with a prostitute.
Okay.
It,
So there was a sequel, but I mean, I more clearly thought that it would be a franchise with Nic Cage's character.
He doesn't do many sequels.
I know he doesn't. Well, he did The Croods 2. That's a big one. He did Kick-Ass 2.
I think that's it. Just those two, right?
It's just like, but he only has like one scene in Kick-Ass 2, and it might actually be like a replay for the first one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to actually go back. Ghost Rider 2, Spirit of Vengeance.
Oh, right. Ghost Rider.
So he does do sequels occasionally, but I did think that this would be a good potential franchise for the character. Obviously, they didn't go that route, but it wasn't like, it was it was a good movie. It was like really deep subject matter, tough subject matter, but the movie was well made and well executed, I thought, for the most part. It started to fall apart a bit in the third act, but I thought there was some potential there. Clearly, that's not the case. Or it was the case. They just went a completely opposite direction and made it a completely unrelated sequel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was probably about time to rate this bad boy. But yeah, I actually, for the most part, enjoyed this movie. I'm not going to watch it again, but
yeah. I don't think I liked it as much as you did. I've got some story problems with it. But yeah, so the way we do this part is we rate every movie based on overall quality and then overall level of caginess, 0 through 20, 0 low, 20 high. I'll kick things off this time. And from a quality standpoint, I don't know. I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a 10.
okay.
That's going to be my quality is going to be a 10, which puts it really with City of Angels. That's what I gave City of Angels last episode, but keeps it below things like It Could Happen to You or Joe or Guarding Tess. All of those I thought were Gone in 60 Seconds. I thought all of those were better. So 10 for quality. Caginess is pretty low. Overall,
yeah. Here, why don't I give my rating before we go to Cages?
Sorry. Yes,
it's okay. I was pretty similar to yours. I didn't love it, but I do see why people do enjoy it. So I was going to give it an 11.
An 11.
So
okay.
I wasn't that far off.
No. Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better then.
Yeah. But yeah, caginess. We didn't get. He was actually a pretty like. He was just a normal guy through most of the movie until he kind of snaps in the third act.
Mm-hmm.
But once he does snap, we do get a good amount of, that caginess we're looking for. So I don't know. I was thinking like maybe a 6.
Interesting.
On caginess.
Okay.
Where are you at?
I was thinking a 5.
Okay, so we're not far off.
Yeah. So okay, cool. So that gives us a 10.5 on quality and a 5.5 on caginess. So that puts it in a kind of an interesting category. It's kind of our lowest quadrant so far, but you'll have to go to comingofcage.com. You can check us out and see all of our little Cage-o-meters to see where all 29 films map out. We'll release this one later in the week. We do have to figure out which movie is going to join our Wheel O Cage. So we always spin our Wheel O Cage to pick our next movie, but we have to add movies to it. So the movie Arsenal will join the wheel to find out what Nicolas Cage movie we're going to talk about next. Again, comingofcage.com. You can find our Wheel O Cage spin for that on our social media handles, and we'll find out when we spin that wheel. Ryan, anything else about 8mm?
No. I mean, it was fine.
If this is a movie that interested you and you want to know more about its production, it does seem like there was a lot of behind the scenes things happening between, director and writer and studio and some of the actors and things like that. So go ahead and look into that if that is of interest to you. I think it does have a very interesting production cycle compared to some other films. So I'm not going to go into all that, but you can Google it. So that's going to be it for us. We, of course, are the Coming of Cage podcast. You can find us at comingofcage.com, where we post our podcast episodes, YouTube video versions of the show. We post our Wheel O Cage episodes and our new Cage-o Bingo series, where we go through our bingo Cage-o cards and see if any of us gets a bingo for this particular movie. So you can go check out all of that stuff. I'm Derek. That is Ryan.
Yup.
Thumbs up from Ryan, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for listening or watching.